Hello. How's it going, Kristjan?
Hey, Harvey, how you doing? I wasn't sure whether you're
Good,
talking
man.
to me or you're talking to other people then.
No, talking to you, man. I'm just going to introduce you here for the guys. Kristjan, thanks a lot for actually making it to the channel. Kristjan, I've been actually following your work for quite a while, like epic animation director, amazing
Oh, wow.
gameplay guy, and you have lots of experience. So because I've been following you on Twitter, and we also did that BAFTA thing, right? The
Yeah,
animation award thing that we
yeah.
did together. So since then, I've been wanting to actually chat to you more one-on-one because we never actually got to sit down and chat. So what better time and what better place to do it than here in front of all these people and just hang out?
Well, thanks for having me, man. I mean, if you want to keep complimenting me, then I'm all for that. I mean, but no, it was awesome. It's like, because obviously we met at BAFTAs and you were on a screen remotely.
Yes,
even then, this was even before COVID. You were on a screen, so you were ahead of your time. And that was really fun. That was really fun. Organized by I was involved by Jim Jagger and an animation director at Rockstar. He got me involved in that, and that was awesome. Basically being in a room with, I mean, how many of us were there? Was like about 10, 12 of us talking about animation and how much we love it. And he was like, I love that. That's one of my favorite things to do. It's like just being in a room of people just talking about animation and how awesome it is. I'm like, let's do that.
For sure. No, I really enjoyed that experience. Like, I didn't see it coming, and the fact that it was the first time that they were doing a BAFTA for animation.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm pretty sure, like, you're a BAFTA member yourself, right? Yeah. And you probably thought about it, probably annoyed them about them having an animation award for animation, right? A BAFTA.
Oh, there's always been, I mean, not just BAFTA. There's always been like passive aggressive tweets that go out every now and again, where animation was always under the arts banner. And I'm like, I understand it, but animation has progressed so much. And the fact that art is now, that animation is being recognized now as its own thing, I think it's really important. It's like, as we were discussing, animation can make or break a title and just how it feels, right? And especially when you're playing games, I mean, this is it. It's like, I think the thing that was really interesting was, even though most of us hadn't met before, we were all on the same page with animation's kind of role in video games. And that, I think, was kind of interesting, because I didn't think I was on my own thinking like that, but it's just really nice to kind of be with other people that understand that as well.
Exactly. Yeah, especially when your peers kind of think the same way as you. Sometimes you feel a little isolated because you're like, am I the only one thinking this way? Is everyone thinking this way?
And the thing is, I mean, I went back and actually had a look at it. That was February 20 something, I think it was. I think 24th. I think it was. Yeah. That might have been the very last thing I did before we got locked down.
Yeah, actually, it was this year.
We got low. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was at the beginning of this year. I know it seems a long time ago, but it was at the beginning of this year. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy, man. That's crazy. A lot of things have gone on this year for sure.
Yeah, a lot of things and nothing at the same time.
And nothing at the same time. Yeah. Okay, so chat, for everyone in the chat actually asking questions. As always, feel free to ask questions to Kristjan, to myself. We'll answer questions as we go along. We'll chat for a little bit now, and then we'll probably get some questions up here. Definitely, if you don't know Kristjan's work, definitely check him out. He's been doing quite a lot of things for quite a long time. He's been involved
don't say like that.
He's true though. He's been involved in titles.
I still think of myself as the interesting thing. I think it was you were talking recently about imposter syndrome, and the thing is even though I've been doing this for 22 years now. And even then, I still feel like I don't belong. Like there'll be days when you'll be like, I'm good at this. I like this. But then there's so many that you kind of just go, I don't know whether I'm good at this anymore. It's like
I get the same.
And I think it's I think everyone does. I call it like bad animation days. When you get bad hair days, you just wake up and then whatever you do, you can't get it to work. And then animation. So sometimes it's just like you just got to walk away, and you know, like I try and find something else to do if it's just not working, and then it's always one of those things. You come back the next day, and then you know, like within usually the first 15 minutes of attacking an animation, the next day it's like, oh, there you go. That was
it
easy.
feels good again. Yeah. And like, I don't know if you feel the same thing, but like, especially being in this position as a director and stuff, because you're detached from animation quite a little bit, right? Because you have to make better decisions and move things forward. Sometimes you actually have that feeling, like that feeling gets exponentially bigger, because you haven't been animating for so long, right? Because perhaps you're actually kind of giving the work to your team, or they don't have time or whatever. And because of this, you kind of feel like after a while, and I've only been doing this for like 6 months, right? The director gig at Barb. So relatively new, been leading before, same kind of situation where you don't actually get to animate for a while. When you actually spend a few months without animation, just taking decisions and managing in meetings, you kind of start feeling like, am I rusty? Do I know still how to animate? Am I still within the trends? Am I losing it? Do you feel the same way? Do you have the feeling sometimes?
Yeah, it's like I'm kind of lucky. It's like I've been able to kind of pick and choose when I animate. I mean, at Lucid, the company I'm at the moment, we only had one other animator when I joined. And she had only been in the industry for I think 6 months before me. And they were working on a small game that didn't get released at the time. And so the good thing about that was there was me and one other person. So, and we needed to kind of hit the ground running with animation for Destruction AllStars. And this was like 3 years ago, I think it was, because we need to start prototyping systems. So I actually got to animate quite a lot. Because there was I didn't have to direct anyone. So the only person I had to direct was myself. So I really enjoyed that, because coming from Ubisoft, it was like, you know, like you usually had like 12 to 20 person teams. And it just you kind of, I mean, I can talk later about like the setup of how Ubisoft worked, but it was more of, I'd be animating and then I'd be spending a lot of my time working with all the other animators, which I absolutely loved. But it basically meant, with animation being such a kind of, I mean, you can't animate for an hour and then walk away. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I find that very, very, you have to focus for like 3, 4, 5 hours at a time. You know what I mean? And then when you're a director, you get people kind of going, can you just have a look at this? Can you do this? Can you do this?
Completely.
So it just becomes harder and harder to actually do quality animation.
Yeah, that's exactly
because of all the other responsibilities. So, and I'm sure you're finding this now, right? So
exactly, and everyone, and it's actually especially worse during COVID, I find, because, like, you know, that feeling of like, if you're not in your desk, if you're not at your desk, people don't see you, therefore they don't bother you. That's not that anymore, because you are at home, so people bother you all the time, because obviously you're supposed to
we found that at the beginning. It almost, there was almost kind of like overkill with communication, because I remember it's like before we all started working from home, it was like you'd have meetings and everyone kind of understood the, you know, like you go into a meeting room, you do your thing, and then you go back to work, and then you might get people approaching your desk every now and again, but it was kind of, you know, when you're there, you're there. But then when you're at home and you're at your desk all the time, people just kind of send you a message, and then next thing you know, you're talking to them for like 20 minutes, and then
that's it.
It was almost like we had to set up boundaries where okay, you're not allowed to speak to people between these times. You know, and that's worked relatively well. I mean,
that's great.
I think there's pros and cons with the whole work from home thing.
Yes,
you know?
for sure.
So how have you found it?
I mean, overall, it's good. Mainly because the team and the company that I am at the moment, Build a Rocket Boy, like we work really fast. Like we have this thing about failing fast. So the best idea actually gets put in. So basically we try to test a lot of things until we actually get to the right idea, and then we try again, and then we go to the next thing, which means that the speed is quite fast in comparison to other companies. For example, I used to actually kind of chill much more than I can actually chill here, even though I was a lead. But it's much more enjoyable that way.
Yeah.
But there also
Yeah.
comes with the fact that there's a lot of questions that need answering, and therefore you need to be there to answer those questions, especially at such an early stage, right? So, so this is why, like, even though I fully intend to hopefully animate at some point in the project, at this point we're just trying to actually kind of set up the base and answer as many questions as we can, so we can then later be like on this, like, just work, right? Just
well, you're kind of what you're doing is you're teaching people how to fish instead of giving them fish.
That's
right.
Exactly
So
right.
and I think that this I mean, it's ultimately gonna. I mean, this is kind of what I tried to do with my team as well. It's like I spent some time at the very beginning when I was kind of on my own. I could animate, and then once the team started coming, I was helping that team. Basically how to, you know, like I was talking to them about process and how I do things and how best to try and help themselves and things like that. And of course I'm still there to critique animation and help out there, but it was more important to me to teach people how to look at things the right way, because I felt like the more I could do that, the more eventually I could kind of back off.
Exactly.
You know, like there's an animator on our team, for example. It's like now it's like at the beginning it's like you'd explain something to her and she'd be like, okay, she'd almost overthink it, right? She'd overthink it. She kind of and she'd almost animate it almost until it was perfect and then show it you. And and then you always you kind of felt bad. You're like, okay, well, we have to do this and this and this. And then it got to the point where the more comfortable she felt in the whole process, the earlier she would start to show me. So it got to the point now where especially towards the end of the project, it was just like, I can just say, hey, I need this thing. And she'd be like, cool. And then she goes off and does the thing and then comes back to me like 2 days later and goes, there you go. And I'm like, that's perfect. We're out. We're done.
Sweet.
Put it in the game. You know what I mean? It's like, it works. I love that.
I love it. It's so awesome. It's so awesome. Because you kind of feel like you had some kind of impact on the person, and the person is a better animator because of the result of working with you. Or
that's the dream. That's the dream.
That's the dream. Yeah.
And I had an amazing animation director at Ubisoft on Assassin's Creed, and I remember it's like all I wanted to do was impress him, right? And he was like this legendary animation director, a guy called Alex Duran. Sorry, it's quite hard to say. And he was the lead animator on Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, and he was the animation director on the first and second Assassin's Creed. He was known in Ubisoft as this kind of legendary figure. And I was lucky enough to kind of work with him, and you know, like, and I remember seeing how he worked and how he worked alongside a programmer, because it was always like kind of they'd be like sat alongside each other. And I remember just trying to get animations past him, and he'd be like, no, you can't do this, and this doesn't work. And then he'd literally come over to my desk when I'd been spending like days and days on an animation. He'd come over and just rip it apart, and I'd be like, oh, you know, it's the worst. And then like the further on down the project, and the more I understood what he was looking for, the less that happened, to the point where later on in the project, he'd be doing the same thing that I was just saying before, where he'd give me a task, and then I'd go ahead and I'd be like, okay, right, I'll do this. And I'd kind of in the back of my head have all his critique before he'd given it in the back of my head.
Nice.
And then I'd present it, and he'd be like, perfect, signed off. I'm like, oh. Like, the first time that happened, I think that was the first time I actually felt like I was good at what I did. It was that moment, and that was like 6 years into my career, I think it was.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So, but that was cool. But I love that.
That's really cool. Like, I think we actually have a question here that is really good for you. So, from Chromosome, how did you get started on your animation journey? And how would you approach getting into the industry if you're going to start all over again?
Oh, wow. Okay. So when I started 22 years ago, the industry was a very different place. So I don't know how I to be honest with you, I think it's probably, I'm not saying it's easier to get in now. I just think there's probably more avenues, but that might make it harder. When I was starting out, I went to university. I studied animation. Didn't feel like I actually learned that much animation. I learned a lot about technique, and I really enjoyed being around other animators. No one else in my entire year, this was 1997 to 2000, that was the class. No one else was doing CG animation. No one else, everyone was doing hand-drawn or stop motion. So I learned a lot of animation from drawn and stop motion. So I used to do a lot of that.
Yeah.
And then I just always looked at CG animation as kind of a tool. So I taught myself how to use 3ds Max the summer before my final film. And then I made a terrible final film about road rage, which might be online somewhere, and I hope it's never seen. It was like, it's really bad. But it really introduced me to how like powerful computers could be with animation and everything at the time. Then I didn't know whether I wanted to go into games or film at the time. I just kind of knew I wanted to animate.
Yeah.
And then it's like I ended up applying for a job in Bristol, got employed as an animator, but ended up being an artist on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and I didn't actually do any animation, which was really weird because this was in 2000.
So you were being an artist, not an animator at that point, right?
Yeah. It was like an artist that had an understanding of animation. And then there was no other animator in the studio at the time, so I kind of just started adding flair into the camera. What we had to do was these pans around the studio. So I started trying to make them look a bit more dynamic, but then ultimately they'd come back and say, it doesn't look like the show. It has to look exactly like the show. So
well, mine is better.
Yeah, there was a little bit that I was like, So, and then, so I did that. I remember I made like a £16,000 bonus on that first game.
Wow.
And I never made a bonus ever again. So it was like, that was my first ever game, and I was thinking, this is easy. If I'm going to get an extra £16,000 every 3 months, then that's it. I'm done. Yeah. Never happened again. Never even came close to it. So I just kind of realized that I really wanted to animate, and then I think there was an opportunity on a couple of games at the studio, and I kind of I'm a big believer in taking opportunities. If you see like a hole, just go for it. Just take it.
For sure.
And I kind of took it, and then I think that you kind of put out a call in the studio of like, does anyone want to be the lead animator? And I just kind of went, I'll do it. Just like that. So, yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I said the industry is not like that now. You know what I mean? It's like, I became a lead animator by default. And this was like 6 months into my career, right? So I'm a lead animator 6 months into my career, so there's a problem there. Yeah. Right. So, and and then I animated, really enjoyed that, and then it just got to a point where I felt that I think Prince of Persia had just come out. Prince of Persia: Sands of Time had just come out, and I remember thinking, like, I'd love to work on a game like that. I used to be obsessed with Prince of Persia. The Amiga version. I was absolutely obsessed with it.
And at the time, it was an amazing game. I remember perfectly at that point in time, Ubisoft was riding so high. They couldn't do no wrong, especially when that game came out. I played that game so much. Yeah.
I mean, well, that was why I wanted to go. So I remember I applied to Ubisoft in 2004, I think it was, and this was before YouTube. This was before you could really. You basically, there was no way of getting a video to Montreal unless you physically sent a copy. You had to physically burn a copy of your showreel onto a DVD, and then physically send it. And I physically sent it. Yeah. So
added envelopes.
Yeah. So and I sent out that to Ubisoft and a couple of other companies. But I really wanted to move to Canada. I don't know why. I just wanted to move to Canada, right? So I did that. Didn't hear anything for 3-4 weeks, I think it was, and then it wasn't like today where you send something off and they go, cool, we've received it, thank you very much, you'll hear back from us. There was none of that. There was like, so I just kind of went back to work for the next few weeks, and then and then what I had to do was Sorry, my wife was just there, so she's just trying to go in. So what I had to do, so I was just distracted. So what I had to do is basically I had a phone call like 4 weeks later, and they were just like, "Hey, would you like to speak to the animation director?" I'm like, "Yeah, cool." So I spoke to the animation director, very French, very very French. I didn't really speak French at the time, and then I started saying how much I love Prince of Persia and all this sort of stuff. Didn't know who the guy was, and it turned out it was Alex. So I was basically telling him how much I loved his game to his face.
That's amazing.
Without realizing. And it was on a phone call as well, because again, there was none of this. This didn't happen. So it was a phone call. So I had a 30-minute phone call, and then 5 minutes after that phone call, they were like, "Do you want a job?" And I was just like, "Yeah, I'd love a job." And they were like, "Cool, quit your job, and we'll sort your visa out, and then we'll see you in 8 weeks." So they sent the plane ticket, all this sort of stuff, and then like 8 weeks later, I was in Montreal.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's a cool way.
Yeah,
of getting in. That's a cool way of getting in as well.
I couldn't imagine doing that now. You know what I mean? It's like it was, and this was when it was actually quite hard to emigrate as well. So I mean, I know this isn't that long ago, but it's
I remember perfectly.
So it was difficult to emigrate to another country.
Yeah, exactly. So, because like when I was actually studying at University of West London, 2003. I was actually dreaming of going to LA to hopefully, like, because you hear all the stories about CalArts and like Disney and all these things, right? But it felt impossible. Like, you felt it was something that you could not do, unlike today, because today it feels much more valuable.
Well, everything feels a lot more compact. It feels like, well, this is it. I mean, I think the second part of this question here is basically saying how you start all over again. I think that now, as you're saying, it's like it's a lot easier to access people like yourself, like me, and to basically kind of, I love Twitter. I use Twitter basically just for work. I don't use Twitter for anything else. I try and keep Twitter for just animation content as much as I possibly can. Yeah. And I've always said, whenever I'm talking, I was like, that's a really good place to kind of reach out to animators, to like maybe animators that you admire, animators that you want to talk to, and you can engage in them, because it's if someone sends me a direct message, I'll probably reply, as long as they're nice. You know what I mean? As long as they're not being nasty to me, I'll reply.
Likewise.
So I get asked quite a lot to do like critiques of show reels, and I'll do them when I have time. It's like I like to do them properly. I don't want to just kind of go, yeah, that's really good, this isn't working, and done. Yeah, I like to try and give as much feedback as I can. Yeah, so I'm a big fan of that. So for me, it'd be like the first thing would be to try and reach out to people. If you were trying to start to get into the industry. Second, I suppose, if you wanted to get into a particular studio, would be to understand how to. Sorry, my son's here again now.
Please, can you put Twinkle Twinkle?
I will do later, bud. I will do later. So
that's cute.
and yeah, he does this all the time. So yeah, and it would be to speak to people about like the sort of thing they do. So say, for example, you want to go and work for Ubisoft, then it's probably a good idea that you understand. I'm just going to put Twinkle Twinkle on for him. Wait a second, Cameron, don't. Sorry, bud. It's like so. And
multitasking.
Yeah, and then so you just kind of go and speak to people about what they want to do. Sorry, wait a second, Cameron. Oh God. So yeah, it'd be like to speak to people about oh my God, about like the sort of things that they want to do. So if you want to work at Ubisoft, you probably kind of should focus on like more realistic styles of animations. If you want to go and work at other studios, understand what they do, and then try and go from there. So,
yeah, for sure. I feel exactly the same way. I think that's definitely a great tip for people to actually get started with it, for sure.
I'm sorry, Cameron. Sorry, it's my son, by the way. Cameron, can you just? I will speak to you later, bud. I'm in the middle of something at the moment. Thanks, Cameron. I'll see you later. Okay. Anyway, so yeah. So hopefully that answers the question.
Nice one.
I'm sorry, I've kind of been a little bit distracted.
No worries at all. Completely understandable, man. And I actually wanted to talk to you. Like, there's quite a few more questions that look really interesting, but I wanted to talk to you about your project that is about to come out. I know you're extremely busy, so thanks a lot for taking the time, because I know that a game that is about to be released, there's nothing more stressful than just that, actually managing all that. So
I think this is a little bit more stressful, to be honest, but it's fine.
So the Destruction AllStars is a release title for PS5, right? And
yes, it is. Yes, yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah.
So
I mean, this is kind of crazy. I mean, the fact that we're shipping a launch title whilst being home for like the last 8 months. That's kind of nuts.
It's a big deal, especially to hit that deadline, right? While things have changed quite a bit from the beginning of the production until now, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, you don't really get dev kits, especially if it's a launch console. You don't get dev kits until the towards the end of the project. Sorry, wait a second. Cameron,
What's the N?
can you go downstairs, please, bud?
What's the N for?
What's the N for? I don't know. I think that's Harvey's logo.
Oh, yeah.
So, actually, well, you can answer that question. What is the N?
Exactly. The N4 is for my name. It's for Newman.
Well, there you go. Harvey Newman. There you go. So he's got it on his hat as well. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's the same.
So it's actually very cool that you got branded hats. So you've got merch. That is very cool. So the Destruction AllStars. Well, there you go. Look at that. We got a big fan. Maybe we should interview Cameron now. So now he's played it. He's 6 years old. He's played it. So
My favourite is definitely Tornado.
wait a second. He might give away secrets. I just got to realise.
Oh yeah,
true. So, Bud, can you? Because you're not
Cameron.
Doris. Can you say hi to Harvey, and then
Cameron.
yeah, he's. There you go. Come over here. There you go.
What?
Just hi. There you go.
I come back. Not
No, don't come back. Don't come back. Man,
He's providing all the entertainment.
Hey, this is work from home. This is exactly what it is. Right? So,
Exactly right.
So that happens normally, during
exactly.
I
get it.
Especially. I mean, so when he was off school for. Let me close the door now. So when he was off school for 5-6 months, that used to happen a lot. Yeah. And usually more dress though. That was the problem.
It was. It's fine. Yeah, my
clothes involved.
My daughter actually walks in the room so much that my team already calls her the animation supervisor. And every time she comes in, they're like, "Oh, your supervisor is behind you." I don't even know because normally on my computer she just comes from here. So I'm talking and I cannot hear. So they are the ones going like, "Hey, Jasmine, hey, your animation supervisor is here." Just like, oh,
that's super cute. Also, so we work with we've partnered with a studio for animation in Florida, a company called Steamroller, so Cameron will come in, and they all know Cameron now. So Cameron will do the same thing, and if Cameron likes an animation, it's approved. So it's like that's it. So yeah, he's coming back in now. So wait a second. So yeah. So I will once I can concentrate, I will talk about Destruction AllStars, I promise.
No problem.
But yeah. So shipping a game from home, and okay, bud. Can you please go downstairs? He's
anyway. So see this. I guess he must be excited to actually see this.
Well, yeah. I think he. It completely throws you. So, sorry, I'm really sorry. Cameron. Thanks. So, so because I'm terrified he's going to give away secrets because he knows all about the game.
Of course, yeah.
No. So it's like I'm super proud of it. We've done an amazing job.
Nice.
Home straight, nearly finished. Loads will be shown soon. Obviously I got to kind of go into full press mode.
Of course. Yeah, no worries. I actually saw a little bit of when they actually released the PlayStation HUD, the UI, the new UI. It looks really cool, and they showed a little bit of the game as well, so a little extra shine.
Well, that's all right. It does load that fast. It genuinely does load that fast. It's like it's very cool. Like I've got the thing right here.
Oh, nice.
So so yeah, and
let's move away from the game. So we don't.
It's probably best for now.
Any danger zone.
I'm gonna see if I can get my wife to come up and get him. Wait a second.
Sure. Sorry. I'll try and choose some questions for you while you do that.
Yeah, sorry. It's just throw it a bit. Yeah. So Yeah, it's fun, but it's been difficult. It's been really difficult. Like the last 8 months has been tough to say the least. Because I mean, the last 8 months of a project are normally quite difficult when you're all together in the office. But the interesting thing I think I've found, and I've kind of joked about this with the rest of the team, like I do genuinely think it's kind of made it a little easier to ship the game. It's difficult in other ways where we can't all be together. But the thing is we kind of, well, we knew what the game was by the time COVID sent us all home.
Yeah.
So it was just about making it. And we just kind of, and we had all that, like we'd done our last mocap shoot. We did our last mocap shoot in February, I think it was. We had all the data back and we knew we weren't going to another mocap shoot. So we knew that, okay, well, we have everything we need now. Yeah. So it was just about kind of processing it, working with it, getting it in the game. Nice. And, you know, like and it's really interesting because we've obviously been playtesting it a lot. And like playtesting a console launch game that has a large multiplayer component at home is kind of difficult as you can expect, right? So it's like, and Sony have been really good about setting us up and helping us do that. But we've basically, the good thing is we've kind of real world tested it. So we have we will be. Sorry, my wife's coming now. Sorry. But
because I guess because you're actually all away from the office, you have actual real life examples of how the game is going to be played out there, right? Without being in the office. So we have a room full of servers.
We've stress tested it. We stress tested it. Some people have played. Played it on big TVs at home in front of the sofa and everything there. So it's about as real as it's going to get. You know? That's great. But I can't wait for stuff to be seen because you know, like I'm genuinely very proud of it.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's great. I'm looking forward to playing it. As I told you before, I'm like I was a huge fan of like way back in the day playing Destruction Derby. So this gave me exactly the same vibes, and I haven't seen any other game come out that has the same exact vibes. For some reason, it's like a genre that got like forgotten, and it was huge, like early 2000s where it was huge, disappeared, and then now you guys are bringing it back. So it's really
cool. We're trying. I mean, the thing is that the team is largely ex-Bizarre Creations guys, Oh, sorry, I'm just putting Twinkle Twinkle on for my son now. Maybe he won't come in now. There we go. So it's a large portion of like ex-Bizarre Creation guys and Sony Liverpool guys and things like that. And then there's people like myself and everything there. So that have got like the character experience. So it's really interesting. I do think it's going to surprise a lot of people.
That's great.
You know, like I mean, you can get in and out of the vehicle whenever you want. You can go fully on foot. You can be doing all sorts of crazy stuff, and it's like it's more than just vehicles doing that. It's a lot more than that. So
that's what I assume. I'm getting it on release because I pre-ordered a PS5, so I'm waiting for it. And
you'll have to tell me where you got your PS5 from because I need one as well now.
Oh yeah, I got. You don't have. I guess you have the dev kit. We can actually use.
I do. Kit, right? I do have the dev kit. Yeah. So I maybe they'll let us keep the dev kit for a little bit longer.
maybe. Yeah. There's a good question for here actually for you or for both of us maybe. Do studios hire the same amount of people as before these times? I guess working from home times. It's harder for graduates to get into the industry. What do you think?
I think this is actually a better question for you because I think you, from what I've heard, I think you're hiring up. So I like with my studio, we all our hiring was done before COVID. So we haven't actually had to hire. So we've kind of we've worked with partners and things like that. So that question is probably a much better one for you, to be honest.
Sure. So the answer to the question is that yes, for sure. I feel like what's happening now in the industry is that things are shifting towards contract work or working from home, obviously, because people don't know exactly when they're going to come back to the office. So in some ways, it's easier for you to get hired. So once again, as long as you have like a really good show reel, or you showcase the fact that you know about gameplay, animation, and you know about games and all that stuff, and you're keen, then I think it depends where you apply to. But I feel like it's as easy, if not easier, than before for animators, because the games industry, I think if there's one thing that came out positively about this pandemic, is that games are very resilient when it comes to these things. I think the games industry has showcased that we keep on going, working from home, still making games, and people want to play games now more than ever, right? So I kind of feel like there is demand for people out there, and depending on the studio and the studio policy, you can actually work from home and be part of a big studio. You don't necessarily need to be in the same place, you know.
Well, no, I think that's really interesting. Actually, there's a. I think you and I will have a similarity here. It's like so Lucid didn't have necessarily like a history in animation, even though like they predominantly were a vehicle studio. And a lot of the games that they'd worked on before were smaller games. They were building up to Destruction AllStars, and the team that we obviously hired for Destruction AllStars is built for that, and it's an extremely good team. Nice. One of the biggest problems we had was we weren't allowed to show anything. So not only was it because it was a launch game on a launch console, we couldn't talk about it.
Same thing.
But you have to now. I'm joking. But no. So we couldn't show anything, and we could show limited amounts of things to people we wanted to hire. So a lot of them kind of had to go off the back of me saying, "Trust me."
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Same.
There was so we actually found it was really difficult to hire senior talent because we couldn't show that, because they weren't willing to take the risk. We could get graduates and juniors not easily, but that wasn't as difficult. But to get people to kind of uproot and move, and now I do think that with work from home, that's kind of all gone out the window a little bit. So I mean, we've now kind of proved as an industry that it's a viable solution as long as everyone's on the same page. And something I learned when working from home with Ubisoft was, as long as like if you're having a Zoom call or whatever you use, right? So if everyone is sat at their desks having the same Zoom call, then everyone's equal.
Yeah.
But then if you get, like, for example, me on a Zoom call and then 8 other people in a room in another place, then it's the balance of power shifts, and then you feel like you're the guy calling in to a meeting. Whereas if you're all sat at a desk, you can all go, "Excuse me, I've got something to say," or you can do that. And I do think it's easy, and it's proved that it can work.
For sure.
So how have you found? Because obviously, I'm assuming you can't show anything that you've done. So
no. Yeah.
So you're gonna have to go with "Trust me."
Trust me, exactly. Right? Yeah, no, it's the same. It's exactly like what you explained right there is exactly the problem that we're having at some points. We actually found that because of this COVID situation, people we're getting some seniors, we're getting some seniority in there. But yeah, it's kind of the same. Like, we have a great team going on right now, and the team is expanding. And I feel like the promise of the game and the names involved with the studio, I think, are bringing people in. That's basically what, as long as people do their due diligence of finding out about the studio, what is Barb, who founded it, who is involved with Barb, and all that stuff, all of a sudden it starts building a picture in people's minds of maybe they have something going on, right? And I feel like because of this COVID situation and working remotely and stuff, all of a sudden it's even though they're in Edinburgh, maybe there's a chance there. And that's normally enough, because then we get into interviews, and then we get into chatting and NDAs and stuff, and then things will be better, right?
What sort of things are you looking for in that? It's it was I knew very clearly what I wanted to see in a show reel for what we were looking for, at least anyway. So do you have a clear idea of what you're looking for?
Yes, for sure. So there's 2 types of show reels that we're actually looking for, but yeah, a very type, and depends on the seniority that we're looking for as well. Like, if he's a lead, if we're looking for a lead or a senior animator, for sure we're looking for a show reel that showcases those things. But what I found, and this was before this position as well, is that sometimes you get a lot of people from VFX or film that they have really snazzy, really amazing show reels that showcase that they can actually do a lot of animation and animation to high quality. But like, you actually wonder how much do they know about gameplay, about actually working in games and putting animation in games and in engine and animation logic. Do they know how things are structured? Do they know about that pipe? Do they know, are they resilient enough to actually go back to other departments and go like, code, right? Is my animation not actually working, right? Those things are things that you don't do in VFX. Are things that you normally, or film, you normally just sit on your chair and you actually get directions from the supervisor, which is cool. And then you do your shot and you actually take all your time and do your shot, which is great. But I think, as you know very well, in games, you kind of have to actually kind of like have much more of that teamwork, because you have the engine. Nothing is straight line. There's always a zigzag to actually get to the end line. And even when you get there and you're like, okay, this works perfect, at some point in time, it will break. And because someone did something somewhere, and then you have to find out exactly why. And I like at least to hire people that I like to rely on them and I like to trust them. So to the point of like, if I hire you as an animator and you already know the ropes and we already been working for 6 months, let's say, I trust you to go and ask people about stuff. And then you can come to me if you have any issues. And if you can solve the problem by yourself, Bob's your uncle. That's great.
We found it quite hard to find. I suppose what I just call them like gameplay animators. Like Ubisoft's full of them, right? So it was never difficult for when you're at Ubisoft. It was like you always wanted to try and find the right person, but the thing is because of Ubisoft as a whole, people would gravitate towards it and they kind of understand what they were doing. So you kind of had the pick of the best, and it was kind of like cheating when you were hiring. It was a lot easier.
Yeah.
With Lucid, it was like, again, it's like with it being a smaller company, getting people to come. We could find animators that have worked in TV and like smaller TV shows and things like that. But we had to try and see enough in the show reel, especially if we were hiring juniors, and go, okay, well, I can see that you can animate, but I think I can help you learn how to be a gameplay animator.
Yeah.
You know, and understanding like the logic of how a system will fit together, how something feels, how something breaks. You don't even necessarily have to be able to implement it yourself. We have people that help us do that. You just have to understand just that logic of how to make something feel right.
Completely. And like you hit the nail on the head, is actually understanding of like the whole process, right? Because you sometimes find people that they just want to animate and just they don't really care about anything else on the game. But games is definitely one of those things that unless you see your animation in game and you can press that button and you can see the reaction of your animation, until that loop is closed, you don't really see the magic of games, right? Otherwise, you look working on loops and you're working on little like directional things and stuff. Yeah. So that doesn't feel magical. It only feels magical when you put it in game and then you press that button. You're like, wow, this feels good.
I always say that gameplay animation isn't about the animation you're working on. Gameplay animation is about the animation before and the animation after. So it's like, if you have to think of things in sequences, like, okay, well, if you're like, say for example, you've got a run animation, then okay, well, you're probably going to have had a start that's come before that, and then before that you will have had an idle, and then and after all of that you're going to have like a stop, or you're going to have a jump, or you're going to have something else, and then it kind of just goes, and then being able to think logically like that, I think is kind of critical. We hired an animator at Lucid, and he ended up turning into a technical animator, which was really, really good. And it ended up being really useful. But he was like a whiz, he is a whiz with Unreal, which is the engine that we're shipping on.
Yeah,
and it was great because I kind of sit down with him, and I didn't have that much experience with Unreal at all, just basically because of Ubisoft, and Ubisoft uses proprietary engines and everything. Yeah. But so then I'd be like, I want to do this. This is how I want to see this. And he'd be like, oh, yeah, you can do this. I was like, awesome. Done. So then I'd sit down with him, And I'd talk to him exactly what I wanted, and then he would do it. And then over time, I'd be like, oh, okay, well, that's how you do this.
Yeah.
And it was kind of translating what was in my head into Unreal. And then, and that was really fun. I've seen some really interesting gameplay reels. I can't think of any off the top of my head at the moment, but, it's like, but if in a gameplay reel, if you can show that you think about things logically, and you've got Unity, you've got Unreal out there, you can do things. And even if the company that you're going to doesn't use those engines, the logic's still the same. So the way you break a system down, the way you do a combat animation is going to be the same. And hey, if you can show that demo when you go for an interview, then great. But if you can show it in a show reel, like how you break systems down, I think in one of my show reels, I did 2 show reels like 10 years ago, I think it was. And one was animation, and it was kind of, hey, this is all my animation. It was all the fancy thing, and it was like to a piece of music and whatever. Yeah. And then the second one was trying to show how I put together systems, and that was showing how you'd animate things together, how you could basically put a bunch of animations together and like show how they blend. And that to me was probably a more useful reel because it showed that I thought about things in a logical way.
Exactly. That's what I tell most animators that actually ask me, like, how do I get into gameplay or gameplay animation, right? And I think the industry now has shifted so far into their own, because you remember very well 10 years ago, as long as you had a show reel that showcased animation, then it will give you a chance, right? But nowadays, I feel like you have to start kind of showcasing much more of that mentality of like, I'm thinking methodically about games. I'm thinking about how things are connecting together. And there's some logic. Even if it's just Maya and you just have like some graphics showcasing, if you press X, then the character jumps and stuff. Just that is enough for you to showcase that you actually are thinking like methodically and in a game play way to actually kind of allow people like us to be like, okay, this guy not only animates well, but also thinks about animations in a gameplay manner, which then gives us much more of a belief that you can hire this person and this person will be able to hit the ground running. And that's really powerful.
Like 100%. It's like having someone that can clearly showcase that they can animate, and like to me, like animation is like 50% of the job, and then getting it in the game is another part. And then it's like, to me, I try and check all animation in engine now. It's like if I'll get an animator show me something in Maya or in Motion Builder, I'm like, cool, that's great, awesome, well done. I'm not that flippant, but I'm like, oh, but to me, it's like, that's great. Yeah, let's get it in the game. Like it's almost like it kind of doesn't matter what I say. There, it's like if it's in the game, even if it looks terrible in Motion Builder, but if it's in the game and it looks and feels great, I'm like, that's the thing, because you've got to look at it in context with everything else. Like if you have a jump or a roll and everything there, and I've been trying to teach people about like hit reactions, and like you don't need to start from an idle pose, for example. It's like the first pose for a hit reaction can be like, be that, right? And then because of that snap, but you don't want to go too far, because if you're too far, then the snap looks wrong. That's right. So you kind of got to find this kind of in between, because what's going to happen is the like 1 or 2 frames of 2 frames of blend is going to cover that initial that head go back, right? So, and then doing something with the camera on top of that, and then how quickly you can recover from that animation, how quickly you can go to the next one where you can interrupt. Yeah. And then as soon as you start thinking about things like holistically outside of just a gorgeous animation, because it's like, I think that's when you've got something. I've always said that, and maybe this is wrong, but it's like animation's not the difficult part. Knowing what to animate is the difficult part, and how it feels in the game is the difficult part. Animating is like, you can just take reference, you can do all that, and it's like, and you can spend like weeks on an animation and make it look stunning. But if it doesn't feel right, then it's useless. It has to feel right.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you mean. Like, I feel like when you hire an animator, they already come with that baggage of animation. As long as you have a good eye for the animation, then that's it. But what you mentioned right now is exactly what we're trying to achieve in games, right? That feel. Like that like, how does it look in game? Does it actually feel good to play? Because you can have the most beautiful. we know games that have beautiful animations but feel sloppy, that it takes forever, especially now with streamers. That's one of the things that annoys them the most, is like the animation takes too long, the reload takes too long. Why am I stuck with this animation? Why I should be actually like shooting at that guy over there, right? Getting that balance between like making it feel snappy so it's not annoying and it's good, but also doesn't get the player stuck into a place that they don't want to be looking at your beautiful animation. It's actually a really fine balance.
Well, this is where, remember when we were talking about, so I remember the BAFTAs now, and remember we were all waxing lyrical about
That's it.
Luigi's Mansion, right? Every single one of us was like, "Oh my god, this is the best thing ever!"
Amazing.
And then we kept talking about how it made us feel, how the animation was really important to the actual experience, and it wasn't saying that all the other games that were on that list weren't like great animation. It was just, it was more of this. The animation in this game in particular is the thing. That's the thing that really makes it feel like this experience. I mean, it's like just like throwing the ghosts around. It's like it feels good, but it didn't feel sluggish. It felt like you went boom. It felt like it had the right amount of weight. And I think there's a fine line between like a 15 frame animation and a 12 frame animation. And I know that sounds, it's only 3 frames, right?
No, but it's true.
But it's huge. It's
huge. Especially when you're polishing the game towards the end. Like you really need to go back and just start frame counting and be like, can we shave off something else here? Like that stuff is really important for sure, man. Yeah.
Well, there was I mean, you'll probably know this. We're working at EA Dice and everything. That you'll know this with like reloads and everything. I'm sure you'll get designers kind of asking you to, can you just shave off like 4 frames from here? You're like, no, because it has to feel like this.
Sure.
And I think there was a really good behind the scenes with the animation director on Call of Duty. I think it was Affinity Ward. Forgotten his name now. And but he was talking about this exact thing, like how he would fight back against design for like 4 frames. It's just like, no, it's really important that this feels like this because it's this kind of gun and this. And he kept going on about, and you could see it was weird. He was really excited about guns. But to him, it was like it was really important that they felt a certain way. I mean, it's like everything being responsive isn't necessarily the right thing. You have to have weight in there. To me, I think the magic number for light hits, like if you're doing sword hits, the magic number we found with Assassin's Creed was 7. So it was 7. And I know that seems really weird. It's like, but it was very, very specific. It was like from the time you push the button to the time you make contact with whatever you're hitting, 7 frames.
Nice.
And that was including anticipation or whatever. If you wanted a heavy attack, it was 14 frames. And it was very specific. So we knew that if we went over that, it would feel, because you want that immediate response. You want it to feel like it's doing something. You don't want to push the button and then go.
Completely.
It needs to be like a bam. Same with the punch. It's like punches with 3 frames, by the way. Which is again, it's really weird that I remember all this. But
you worked on the project for so long, right? No, but it's exactly the same thing. But in Battlefield, there was 2 variables to every weapon, which was like how did the weapon look in reality? So all the sound designs always have like reference to weapons when they shoot them, right? So the sound designs would actually go to like a field somewhere, and they would actually get the proper weapons. And they would have references to them, or they either had the real weapons or references to them, which was great. And then we'll look at that reference from an animator standpoint, and then we'll try to replicate it in Maya, but actually make it gamified, which was obviously the reloads need to be faster, needs to shoot faster, because otherwise you would spend a lot of time just grabbing a bullet, putting it in, all that stuff, right? So some of the stuff that you find is that there's a lot of cheating that the player doesn't see. So for example, whenever you were to hold a rifle, like, I don't know if you can see both of my hands.
I can see one of them. There you go.
For the world higher rifle like this, whenever you actually shoot the bullet, and if it's just one bullet, whenever we were to reload it, that same bullet would actually kind of go through the player's hand, and then it will appear in his hand, and then eventually put it in. And if you have to reload more than one bullet, that you put that bullet in, you go back, and then you kind of are coming back, and then you put that bullet again.
Well, this is it, right? So all the stuff you don't see is like you can just get away with all sorts of things. Like with third-person animation, you can't get away with anything.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's what happens, because you can actually take the hand off camera, do whatever, and then put it back in camera, and then shot. With third-person animation, for sure, you cannot do anything like that. Battlefront, for example, when we're animating like Dooku and Yodas and all these other things, like we had to make them as faithful to the movies as possible, and every single move needed to be scrutinized, and they needed to be very, very much Lucasfilm, like does this feel like Yoda? You know what I mean? Stuff like that.
So that's really interesting. Were they checking? Did you have people outside of EA checking your animation for kind of authenticity?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Wow. Oh, I'd hate that. I'd hate that.
Yeah, it was my first experience. It was my first experience going through that. Normally, you actually work for a studio. If you work in Battlefield, then it's diced in EA. But it was my first experience dealing with a studio that, even though you're making the game, there's like an Eye of Sauron somewhere. And they were brilliant. They were great people, by the way. But there is someone looking at your work and just going like, especially for Star Wars, because obviously it's such a big thing. And there's so much like lore, and everyone knows everything about the details of stuff. So they definitely need to make sure that things are as faithful as possible.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense. But some of the stuff that we had to change, like we never anticipated. It was always like left field things that were like, really? Just that? But,
Han Solo's left-handed. You're like, oh, what? It's like everyone's going to go and check that now. It's like, no, I don't know whether he is or not. But well, that's fascinating. I wouldn't have even thought that it kind of makes sense. I suppose the closest, I mean, it didn't happen to me, but the closest I think that happened at Ubisoft would have been the Mario Rabbids crossover. I know there was people from Nintendo that were kind of looking at how the Ubisoft team were looking at, I think it was Ubisoft Italy. There's a really good talk out there, actually. The two guys that did it are fantastic animators. And they had to animate in the style of Mario, but also make it fit within this Rabid world. And I know they had people from Nintendo kind of going back and forth and just going, oh, that needs to be more Mario, or that needs to be more Luigi, yada, yada, yada. Right. So that, I think, I find that very tough as an animation director, I think.
No,
this is an amazing animation. This feels great. And then you've got some guy just going, no.
Yeah. No, it is though. It is. Like I think the toughest thing for us was actually creating assets for the latest movie that came out from the Rise of Skywalker Saga. We were making the game. We were making a DLC at the same time as the movie was being released the same year, and both things needed to be released at the same time, right? So the movie and the game. So working with secrecy, because the amount of secrecy involved in that, as you can imagine, is huge, right? So working on assets that are secret and then making that stuff work and being faithful to game without seeing the movie, make you faithful to the movie without seeing it. It's a high task. It's a high task because the only thing you have is Dota saying, no, yes, more of this, less of that. And you're like, but I thought you told me, no, things have changed. Just make it less of this, more of that. It's like,
that's game dev. That's game. Right. it's like you'd be like, oh no, yeah. It's like things can change like that. You know? So, I mean, we've even found that with Destruction AllStars. You know, it's like things that, you know, like it was kind of easy at the beginning because, like we were, you know, like developing the IP, and when you're creating a brand new IP, you're nothing, right? So when you're nothing, you can be anything. And then we were kind of throwing all these crazy ideas out there, and then every single one of them was sticking. Like one of the characters uses ASL, right? So, and that was kind of inspired by Moss with Richard Lico, right? So and it's like, because I love the fact that he has a character doing that. But then we were talking about well, this character, you know, is wearing like a full face mask, and we wanted to kind of give him something that I suppose would make him stand out from all the other, I suppose, chatterboxes, all the other characters. And this character started, and then one of the animators actually could communicate using ASL.
That's great.
So they pitched it, and I was just like, I love that. I've seen it here. I loved it there. So they started pitching all these animations using ASL. The interesting thing is Sony came back at one point, and it turned out that someone in Sony QA also spoke ASL. And they were like, oh my God, this happened. And I was like, I saw this, I understood it. Yeah. And then they started kind of going back and forth, going, well, I'm not sure about this, and I'm not sure about this. And then they started saying, but it was really interesting. And then, but we were trying to find all these like personality quirks. Yeah. But I feel like that was something we could do early on in the project. And I think that now there's so many people involved in Destruction AllStars that I think it would be a lot harder to get. We'd have to go through so many more gates to get those ideas through. That there's more opportunities for those ideas to just go, actually, we think that's a bit too complicated. We don't want to do that. Yeah, you know what I mean? So, whereas early on, we could just go, well, there's this. Sure. And then we could get anything through. It's great.
Yeah. Well, I'm going through that for the first time in this project, because on all the projects that I had previously, as you can imagine, in Battlefront, Battlefield, and all this other stuff, like you can actually do like just throw ideas and be like, yeah, this is the best idea ever. You can change some things, but not like. But with this project, that's exactly where we're at the moment, and it feels amazing. It's an amazing feeling to actually kind of have just like, yay, let's just create whatever we want.
Having the influence, it's great. I mean, it was at the beginning of the project. Well, obviously through the whole length of the project, but I was working with like a small group of people, like almost like a little cabal of people working on like gameplay mechanics. And we had to solve problems like jumping onto the car and how we're going to get in and out and all this sort of, and I've been through a lot of these problems before with Ubisoft, like with Watchdogs. Getting in and out of cars is an absolute nightmare because you get in on a certain side of the car, then if you're on the other side of the car, when you open the door, then you have to go in through the door, then if you're on the front of the car, then you have to open the door and then go around the door, and then there could be like hundreds of animations just to get in one car. So we had to try and solve this problem. And we managed to solve it with, I can't remember how many around it, but we reduced that number right down. And the way we reduced it right down is we decided that all characters could only get in through the sunroof. Right? So we did this whole thing where we're like, okay, well, we've welded up the doors, like the Destruction Derby and everything. It was like, okay, well, we welded up the doors, we can sell that. It was like, okay, cool. Right, well, now all the characters get in through the top. Cool, well, what else can we do? Well, we're in our own world. All the cockpits are in the middle of the car. So then we started saying that instead of the cockpits being on the left or the right, they were all in the middle. So then all of a sudden now we can go, okay, well, we can jump on top of the car. Doesn't matter where you are. So you can be front, back, left, right. You can jump onto the car. Then you can jump onto the roof. Then you can get in the car. And then the thing is when they're in the car, you can lerp them. So it doesn't matter whether the sunroof is this high and the cockpit's there, or the sunroof's there and the cockpit's down there. It doesn't matter because you just go whoop, you just slide them down. So and the cool thing about that is you can do all these flashy entrances. So you can have people jumping on the car and then do a backflip and then get in the car, and it looks really cool. And it becomes this character-filled moment. And we solved this problem relatively early on. And I remember the first time we started seeing that, and then all characters like jumping onto vehicles and kind of doing like doing a backflip or doing some sort of kind of breakdance move and then getting in. I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. So and the good thing is we were quite smart with how we were building the systems, and we could apply that to any one of the characters. So it meant the animation was never in the way. So you could apply these animations to any character. So whenever a new character went in the game, they'd have a full set of animation. And then all we'd have to do is kind of replace animation just to make it look good and make it feel better and all that sort of stuff. But being smart with that solution saved us a ridiculous amount of animation. But they're the sort of things that I love doing. But it's like I feel like we had the room to do that at the beginning. I feel like if we'd kind of said this is what we wanted to do, and we'd said that later on, I think that there would have been so many gates to people going, no, that does feel right. Yeah. So but by the time we showed it, it was done. And we were like, there we go, we've done it now. And they were like, oh, that feels amazing. So I was like, great, next.
Yeah. Those smart decisions early on, it's the stuff that I was looking forward to actually kind of get to, because normally when you actually get to establish studio, those decisions have been made years ago. So normally you're working with like a bunch of rules that have been set way before your time, and you have to work within them. And sometimes it makes sense depending on the project, sometimes it doesn't, but they've been there, they've been pre-established. So yeah, being the person that actually is there to establish those rules early on, and then people work building on top of that work, right? As you mentioned, like getting gates later on, and be like, this has been set up this way ages ago, so we need to stick with that. It's incredibly
It's my favorite
important.
thing. I absolutely love problem solving. I love it. You know, it's like we had it with Assassins as well. So I remember the original combat system for Assassins was parries and lunges. It was very much like fencing, and it just from a third-person camera. Well, I mean, and the reason it was set up like that was because the original Amiga Prince of Persia was all parries and lunging. And we kind of felt like, oh, well, this is the way we have to go. And they wanted to go with this ultra-realistic combat system at the time where it was one-hit kills. And, you know, like, if you got hit by the sword, it meant death. So it was all going to be about blocking and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. So, but the problem was when you played it, it sounded great on paper, but when you played it, it was really boring. It was really dull, and then it just became this standoff where you just kind of like, you know, like doing the Star Trek kind of circling each other, right? So, and it wasn't very fun.
Yeah,
and then, so we were like, and then I think there was, I think the Ubisoft cinematic department, we had like a full on kind of blur level cinematic department on the 5th floor, and they were working on the announce trailer. And they put this one move into the game where the assassin kind of runs up the stairs and someone takes a swing at him and he just kind of moves out of the way and it looks super cool. And he kind of stabs him as he goes down. And I was just like, and I remember seeing that and just going, that doesn't look like the combat system, but that looks awesome. I like that. So then myself and one of the programmers, I basically said, hey, I've got an idea. If I do this thing, can you just put it in the game? And he was just like, yeah, sure. So, and we were kind of young and we didn't have homes to go to, you know what I mean? It's like, it was one of those things. It's like, we were both working late. We were both like really into the game. And we kind of just played around. It was like 2 days. I think I put a prototype animation of that exact move where someone was swinging and then moving out of the way. We put it into the game. And then we just we showed the creative director, Patrice, at the time. Didn't tell anyone that it was there and just said, hey, we just want to show you a thing. And then he was like, all we told him was, when someone's about to hit you, push this button. And he was like, okay. And then he did it. And then he just kind of threw the control down, like, oh my God. I was like, that was amazing. And he was like, that, everything around that. And then the whole system kind of like, and then we kind of realized we could have these moments where you could still have, it could look really interesting. And then we started kind of building the combat system so it was more kind of balletic. And then that ended up kind of becoming like a signature of a lot of stuff that the team was doing, where everything had to kind of flow into one another. And you know, like it was, I mean, it wasn't the best combat system. I fully know that, but it set the groundwork. Yeah. It set the groundwork for the rest of them. And, for sure. You know, like, and you know, like we had something, we knew we had something at the time. It's like, I didn't get the chance to kind of take it on to where I wanted to take it, but it was, but that to me was solving a problem. And, you know, like, I love finding a way and kind of going rogue. I used to kind of joke that on every project I've been on, I've kind of gone rogue like once or twice, and I've just added something and then kind of shown it. And then, and then, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to ask, I'm just going to do it. And then they just go, oh, I've done a thing. Yeah. And everyone's like, oh my God, that's amazing. And I'm like, cool. Right. Next. So, yeah. Don't ask, just do it. So.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I feel the same way. I've been doing that for a while now. And I think that's how you actually end up here, like doing the directing thing and stuff. Because then you start finding out, like, maybe I want to be that person that actually takes the decisions early on without getting in trouble.
I had someone do it to me. I had someone that was a weird thing. It was like I had someone on my team recently throw it in my face, as in like full on do something. Like I'd asked them to do something, and then they went and did something else, and it was better. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. And I was just like, you know, I was conflicted. I was super proud. I was like, oh, that's amazing. But I was like, but that wasn't my idea. But that's still amazing. That's awesome. So I love it when that happens. You know, that's like I've kind of realized that's the buzz I need now. I need someone else doing what I did to me. I want
Exactly.
that.
Yeah, exactly. That's good. At least when he's done to you, you understand where he comes from. You're proud of the person
Yeah,
instead of being
yeah.
mad because he didn't came.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you get that, right? I got that sometimes, that you actually have the better idea, and the person just gets mad with you for the rest of the project because you're the guy that actually went rogue for a little bit, and actually now something is in game now that it wasn't there before and didn't came from them. It just gets messy.
It came from the right place. It absolutely came from the right place, and it was amazing.
That's
so
right.
It's like, and I loved the fact that he cared enough about the game and what we were trying to do to go and do this thing. You know what I mean? It's like if he hadn't done it, it wouldn't be there. Because like I was going to do it a different way, and they were like, "Oh, we could do this thing," and I was like, "That's amazing. I really like that." So I can't talk about what it is, unfortunately.
And I think it's those kind of animators that you have to keep a hold of the most, because those are the ones that they go the extra mile to really, and they really believe in the game and what you guys are trying to do, right?
Yeah.
To the point that they actually worked a little harder on the side in order to actually showcase something.
I think that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone. So to go back to one of the earlier questions, I think what I'm looking for someone to go rogue. I want someone to want to be on my team, and then go a little rogue within reason. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to go rogue and just go, well, I'm going to animate a first-person game. I'm like, no. No, it's like we're making a third-person game. I don't want you going first-person. It's like, that's not happening. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so within the constraints, that's the main thing.
Makes sense. Actually, that actually kind of flows into this question by David that I think is actually quite relevant. David asks, how do you keep animators motivated when it comes to like backtracking? If you actually ask them to do something and then you actually ask them to do something else entirely.
Okay. As the design changes based on feedback, it often happens that there might be some backtracking when it comes to animation as well. How do you keep your animators motivated? This happens a lot. Okay. For me, I think it's very important that as an animation director, I don't ever try and just go, give it to me, I will do it. Right? I'm very much, I'll try and give feedback. And I might not give all the feedback in one go because I think it can be overwhelming. It might be I'll try and go, well, let's fix this one thing. Like, I'll try and look at an animation and go, okay, well, I see your intention. I see what you're trying to do. And then I'm also open to being wrong. Like if the animation is good, but maybe something isn't what I thought it was going to be, I'll speak to the animator and be like, well, what were you intending to do? I try and work out where they were coming from. Because it might be something as simple as there's too many steps, so it just looks a bit messy, right? So it's like, well, I wanted to get from here to here over this large amount of time. I'll be like, okay, well, you try and get the intention down, and then get some of that kind of. You try and like deconstruct it, I suppose, a little bit. Yeah. I'd like to think that, I'm never going to tell an animator that they're not good. I'm never going to do that because I think animation is very subjective. I think that I'll try and help them to get that. And I know I'm not the best animator in the world, it's like, but I know I'm good at certain things, right? So, and I think that we're always learning. So it's just, for me, it's trying to identify what's good, and then maybe kind of picking out areas that aren't as strong, and then saying, okay, well, let's improve this. Or it might be, for example, if someone's doing a sword swing, and then it's not clear what the sword swing is, I might be like, well, okay, well, it's actually not the sword swing, it's the anticipation. You know what I mean? Because the anticipation might be the thing that makes the whole thing readable. It might be the follow through afterwards. It might not actually be the sword swing. You know what I mean? The pose for the sword swing might be true. It might be just the whole thing. So I'll try and, as I said, work out what the intention of the move is, what they're trying to show. If it is a sword swing, something like that, then I'll be like, okay, well, let's make this clear. I always try and make things look comfortable as well. Like even if you're breaking a limb, I still think it should look relatively comfortable. As in, like if you're kind of, it's like it's still going to be anatomically correct, I suppose. You're not gonna have shoulders and ankles and everything kind of bending the wrong way for too long. You can do it over a frame or two, but not for too long. I think if it was to happen a lot, I'd probably spend more time with them. I've been lucky that I think if it does happen, I will sit down with them for like an hour or something. And sometimes I have even animated with them. You know, I haven't animated for them. I've animated with them.
Yeah.
I've been known to do that a few times, and it used to kind of. I did it more at Ubisoft actually. There was a couple of animators that used to get really scared if they heard me coming over. But I used to sit down with them and really trying to explain what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Like combat was like, I think when we were doing cover takedowns, I had a very, very clear idea in my head of how they should look and feel, like even with camera moves and everything there. So I found that quite easy to break down and explain if it didn't quite work.
Yeah.
But the goal is to kind of spend less and less time the more and more comfortable they get. I've never given up on an animator yet. I don't think. 22 years, I don't think I have anyway. So
yeah, likewise.
I don't know. I mean, what about you?
Same thing. Like I basically, when it comes to actually giving feedback, it depends on the level of the animator. Every animator is slightly different, right? There's animators that are very, there's animators that are very, not boisterous, but like confident in their skills. But sometimes the skills are not up to the level of confidence they have. And sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes you have animators that are really good, but they're not really confident in themselves to actually kind of achieve that, right? Yeah, and I feel like I do a lot of exactly what you mentioned. So sitting down with them, giving them feedback, try to actually kind of make them confident in themselves, trying to actually make sure that they know that like it's only temporary, that they don't know as much as they need to know in order to actually get things in game. That's another thing that I get, right? Because especially for gameplay, you get in and you're like, oh, this is technical stuff. And especially when it comes to like scripters and coders and all these other people, like it feels always like you know less than everybody else in the beginning, right? When you get into the games industry, you feel like you're completely outside of your element. So I try to kind of like give them also that certainty that this is only temporary. Eventually you're going to get it, and you're going to be dancing around, and you're going to be fine, and you're going to get to know the motions and put it in game and testing it out and getting it back. But I always try to kind of start in Maya, like out of all places, instead of going to game, because I try to give them more information that they need to know when I give them feedback, so they know why they're going to do this, and maybe the 2 or 3 animations that follow through. Because sometimes you go do a jump, and then you just bounce. Give me the best jump you can give me. And then you ask them to actually go and do like a ledge grab, and there's no explanation why they did the 2 animations.
Yeah, there's no context. There's no. It's like we were saying before, about the whole before, middle, and after.
Exactly.
It's like I think there's an element of that, and I think that a good example, I suppose, is instead it's like, you remember I said the animator that was Lucid before I got there. Yeah. She didn't really have any. She hadn't worked with any other animator before, so she didn't really know. She was kind of basically thrown to the wolves like straight away, and then she was the only animator I had, so I spent a lot of time with her. Yeah. I mean, and she, I think, so here's me with like 20 years experience, and here's her with 6 months of experience. So, and I was trying to kind of bridge that gap, and I really wanted her, because she was already a good animator, but I just wanted her to kind of understand certain things. And it's like I said, she was animating too much. I think she was overthinking things. Yeah. And it got to the point where I was just like, block something out, block something you think is right. And her blocking always looked really, really good. And then there was this kind of breakdown when she would go from blocking to spline. Yeah. And then it was like, it would just lose something. So we went back and we said, block out more. It's just as simple as that. It's just like, double the amount of times, double the amount of frames you're blocking out, and then she'd go to spline, and then it still wouldn't look right. It'd be like, okay, well, there's this. And then you'd maybe go through some of the posing and some of the timing. But ultimately, it was like, I'd try and keep her in blocking until she was comfortable. Yeah. And then kind of go to spline. Yeah. And I think that back and forth, and then the more she kind of understood what I was looking for, like, I want things to be comfortable, I don't want the ankles to break, I want the knees to feel like this, and we're looking for strong poses and like almost triangles, like, so if you're kind of crouching down, it looks like the weight is all in the right place. It looks like the weight's on the front foot or the back foot or wherever it is.
Yeah.
I was like, once we know what that is, then we can kind of move forward. And it got to the point where it's like less and less now.
No, completely. And like going back to this, how to keep your animators motivated. It's not necessarily about feedback per se, but it's about like just generically keeping the animators motivated. What I found is that giving your team information. I don't know. You can tell me if you actually find the same thing, but giving your team extra information that of like feedback or reactions from external people about the animation department on how they perceive that stuff, and saying that in the most motivational way possible gives them like a perception on how their work is perceived by other people. Because what happens at our level is that you get a lot of information from a lot of people, and normally it's easy for you to keep it to yourself because there's this thing about like, my team doesn't need to know it, they just need to animate whatever. But going that extra mile and going like, look, they said these things about us, about this new thing that we did, and they love it for these reasons, and this person said this said that, and all that. I found that incredibly motivating for the team, because all of a sudden they have the bigger picture.
Well, I think you can give, it's like, we've both got children, right? So it's kind of like, it's like with my son, he was learning to ride his bike, and he just looked at the end goal of riding his bike. Was unreachable for him, so we gamified it. We basically said, okay, right, get on your bike, and if you can effectively stay on your bike for like, without even pedaling, just literally kind of balance for like a couple of seconds, that's level 1. Tick. You know what I mean? So you kind of do that, and it was an easy win, right? And I knew that, okay, well, I can get some easy wins here by just kind of gamifying the whole thing. I was like, okay, well, now if you can get on the bike and you can kind of like ride for like 2 or 3 seconds without putting your foot down, then that's level 2. Then if you can ride on your own for like 10 seconds, then that's level 3, and so on and so on. Then it becomes, can you turn? Can you brake? Can you do this? Can you do that? So, and eventually, in the course of an hour, I think it was, he was riding his bike. And he was a bit shaky, but he was riding his bike. He was basically going from one end of the car park to the other. And the great thing is, this is during, like, there was no cars in any of these car parks because it was coronavirus. So it was in a supermarket, right? So it was at the perfect time. But my point being is it's easy wins. Easy wins. And as you said, it's like, if you're finding that you're looking at whole animation, you're looking at the whole thing, break it down. Break it down into these smaller pieces and kind of go, well, let's just get this part feeling good. Let's get like the blocking feeling right. Let's do all these other things. And I find a good way to kind of keep animators motivated, like, not only is it worth like letting them know of any external feedback you get, and especially if you've got someone like Sony going, I love that animation, let them know, 100% let them know. But it's ownership. It's ownership. If like, the worst thing I think you can do as an animation director is just go, I'll take that, thank you very much. You know what I mean? It's like, it destroys your confidence. So, like, I would much rather let them, give them a little bit longer and kind of watch them flounder a little bit, but learn. And and I'll try and guide them through that instead of just going, I know the answer. It's like, I know that if I was to take that animation off them, I will work that problem out. But I don't want to do that. I want to try and go through my process as much as I possibly can, so this person will also learn this, so then when it comes to later on in the project, and that's the thing, is you don't want to be like late on in the project where you've got to like be super quick. You don't want to be going, well, I need to spend 2 hours with this one person doing this one thing. You can't do it.
For sure not. It's impossible. Even if you wanted to, it's impossible. So like Chromosome is asking this, and it's something that I'm curious about as well. What was your first game? Was your first game Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? I think we established
first professional game was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Right. And
the first game that I think I have my credits on was Sonic 3D.
Oh, was it?
So yeah. Sonic 3D on the Mega Drive.
3D on the Mega Drive.
Yeah. Flicky's Island.
Flicky's Island.
I animated the pufferfish that when you went near it, just went whoop. Like that.
That's amazing.
So that was the first ever game. I loved it. That was the first ever animation I did that was in a game. It's like
on the Mega Drive. That's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm Mega Drive.
That's pretty cool.
Game I'm most proud of. I mean, I'm extremely proud of Assassin's Creed, but that wasn't. I was a lead on Assassin's Creed, but I was a lead on a small part.
Okay.
I was extremely proud of Splinter Cell just because of I felt like I had a big part in assembling that team, and and we did some amazing things, and we made some really good decisions, and I'm extremely proud of that.
Someone just said Sonic 3D was great. Juancho, I agree, man. I remember when it came out, I was like, wow, this is amazing work.
It's weird. It's like, but I think like with Assassins, I'm proud of what it achieved, because I feel like we not broke the industry, but we changed the perception of what of games and action adventure games were at the time, and that was kind of really important. That was something that it was weird. I remember being on that team, feeling and knowing that it was something different.
Yeah,
we didn't know whether it was going to be successful. But I remember thinking it's definitely something different. I've never seen this before. So from that, I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, when it came out, it was especially the ending. How he actually had a twist in the end and stuff, and the animations. from an animator standpoint, seeing like him like vaulting and jumping, like going up the walls and the fighting and like the dodging, like you were talking about, that stuff to me was like, wow, like the guys really what they do.
I think I'm proud of that because. It's weird. It's like I'm proud of that because it was a new IP. The stuff we did had never been seen before, so everything was problem solving. I'm really proud of Splinter Cell just because that was a new studio, a new team, but we were building on previous Splinter Cells, so that was kind of a little bit easier because you could just look at those and go, well, that didn't work. Let's fix that and make it better. But I'm extremely proud of what we did for that. And to be honest with you, like Destruction AllStars is like. So I'm proud of things for different reasons. So I know that sounds very diplomatic, but but I'm always known as the Assassin's Creed guy. So I suppose it's that.
You're going to be known as the Destruction AllStars guy soon.
Oh, who knows? Who knows? The PlayStation 5 launch title guy.
Nah. I think from the animations that I've seen on the trailer, like the game looks extremely fun. So I think.
Oh, you wait until you see gameplay, man. You wait.
Oh, yeah, I have no doubt, man. It's gonna be great.
Hopefully soon.
Something else that I actually wanted to talk to you about is like you have this excellent presentation. I think it's a GDC presentation about motion matching.
Okay.
It was a robot that you guys did, right?
Yeah.
That stuff, like I watched that maybe a year ago or maybe a little longer.
Okay.
That was before we actually jumped into the BAFTA. So that's why I recognized your face. I was like, oh, that's Kristjan. So yeah, but that to me was the first time that I saw a presentation that really sold to me motion matching and like made me feel like there's a future here. Like as an animator, I didn't feel offended because you know how it is. The first time you hear about it, it's like it's destroying animation. The end of all animators. But after seeing your presentation, I was genuinely going like, man, this actually can be a positive thing. And then obviously since then, I've seen so many games and so many things that I think that there's a place for both things, and it's going to be great. So I appreciate you doing that presentation. That was great.
No, thank you very much. It's like that presentation was motion matching was weird. It was like we were trying to solve a problem, and the problem we were trying to solve was the first thing any animation director did at Ubisoft was effectively redo a locomotion system. So whenever a new animation director took over a project like Assassins, Splinter Cell, whatever, kind of an ego thing, but also because things just progressed, is they try and make the locomotion system different. They try and improve it.
Yeah. And
I was just like, I just don't see the point, because ultimately it's a locomotion system. It's kind of, you're just moving the character around. Some of the games we're doing are ultra realistic, like Assassins and like For Honor and Watchdogs and all this sort of stuff. It's like, and Splinter Cell. I was just like, there has to be a better way. There has to be, So, and we were lucky enough that Ubisoft Toronto, we just hired a guy from IO Interactive, a guy called Michael Butner. And he'd been testing out what he was calling motion fields at the time. and he'd done it in, I think it was in Hitman. I can't remember which one it was, but it was in Hitman. There's a crowd scene at the end, and then Hitman kind of goes through the crowd, and he was responsible for that. And he made everything. It was basically how he wanted to get realistic animation, kind of with all these transitions and everything there, but basically cheap.
Yeah.
You know, so and he came to Ubisoft Toronto, and we had some downtime after Splinter Cell, and we were looking to ramp up at the time for another game. Got to be careful what I say. We were looking to ramp up with that because even though I'm not there anymore, I still don't want to take it. But so we were looking to ramp up for that, and he was like, "I've got this idea," and because I was the animation director, he was just like, "Can you give me the go ahead to do it?" And he was just so he explained it to me. I was like, "That sounds amazing. How long are you going to take to get a prototype up?" And he goes, "I can probably do it in a couple of weeks." I was like, "Go for it." So he came back to me with a Stickman kind of prototype, which I think I showed in my presentation, and that was completely playable, and it felt better than anything I'd ever felt before, ever.
Yeah.
And with a Stickman, I was like, "This is insane."
Yeah.
So, and then he was just like, "Do you think we can go to the mocap studio and go and get some mocap?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." So the next day we went to the mocap studio, which was next door, went and caught what then became the dance cards.
Yeah.
And he was just like, "I need all these motions." And I was just like, "That's just way too." It was like 10 minutes of animation.
Okay.
And I was just like, "That's way too expensive. That's never going to ship in a game." You know, so but we managed to get this thing, and because we didn't have any other constraints, just put it in, and we had the character running, we had him walking, we had him blending between jogging, we had him slowing down on a thing, we had him snaking, we had all these things, and I was just like, that is incredible, because it was really responsive, and it looked better than anything. I was like, this looks better than anything I've ever done, and it looks better than any other Ubisoft game ever. I was like, if we ship this, we win. So
that's exactly right. Like, let me see if I can actually get it here. Like, just so as you're talking about it, because to me, I felt like that was probably the beginning. Like before other games from Ubisoft came along, that was probably the beginning of the motion matching.
It was. So For Honor was the first game that shipped with it. I didn't actually ever ship a game with it. So I think there's a Stickman. There's a Stickman demo that'll be earlier on. I think potentially.
Yeah.
It's earlier on.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So it's just go back a bit. There you go. It's there.
It's here?
No. I keep going forward a bit. Go forward. Go forward. There you go. That's it.
Oh, okay.
So that demo there. That demo there. And I did this in this talk. I did this whole thing about, and I actually talked over playing it, and I've still got that demo. Yeah. And it still feels really good. And there was the running joke was I did this thing where when I stopped, because I didn't know what was going to be captured, I didn't know what was going to take, I kind of scratched my nose. I just did that, and then it appeared in every single it appeared in every single like transition. Yeah. And motion matching, it's not loops. It's looking at that. That was the thing. The first test here. It's looking for effectively transitions, and it's looking for the proper exit point. Yeah. So if you put lots of exits in there, so if you like foot left, foot right, and then if you put like transition from sprint to walk, and then sprint to run, sprint to jog, like sprint to stop, and if you put all those transitions in there, it gives it all these options, because it's basically looking forward like 1 or something seconds, right? So this was the first test, the 10-15 minute one, and it was super expensive, but it looked incredible. And then that was enough for the head of the studio to basically just go, "Hey, if you want to pursue this, then we can do it." And it kind of turned into we got it into Snowdrop, I think it was, which was the Division, the engine that was being used for the Division, and that's where the robot. And the reason we had it on a robot is because we didn't want to put it on. It was weird because I wanted to put it on a human. Yeah. But we put it on a robot just because when we were showing it around all the other studios, we kind of didn't want people to start projecting assassins or whatever onto it. Right? So we did that, and then it kind of ended up turning into this little side project, which never really kind of got off the ground. Yeah. But we found all these little.
The robot has a lot of personality already. Look at him going.
Well, yeah, but the thing is that's me, right? Yeah, that's my run. That is, there was no, as I said, there was no IK on the feet. And we had all the things. It was like the banking looked like accurate. The snaking to me was the key, like the snaking and the fact that you're doing that, and it's like, and then it just I still think it looks good now. You know what I mean? It's like it's a real shame we didn't do anything with it.
I know it looks great.
But the reason. Oh yeah. I mean, like I still talk about it now, and then like I know Naughty Dog shipped The Last of Us 2 with motion matching.
That's it.
In it, UFC. So we went to GDC with the intention of sharing this out information because we knew it was a really good look for us because if we're sharing all this information, that will get other people to want to come to us. Sure. And also we kind of knew that if we shared it, other studios and other companies like EA would potentially either take it and do something with it, or also maybe start to share some of their things. Okay. So there was so many more things that I didn't show in this.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But yeah, we like the kind of the falling around. If you can, the way with motion matching, to me, it was very much like if you can think of something in the terms of a locomotion system, it could work. So if you could think of like hit reactions, if you could think of hit reactions in terms of locomotion systems, it would work. If you could think of combat in terms of locomotion systems, it would work.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to think of it like just locomotion. But to me, by using it for locomotion systems, it basically meant you could skip to the end. So you could create this amazing locomotion system and then focus on all the other kind of really cool stuff. So because the locomotion system was kind of done and out the way.
That's it, exactly. No, but I thought it was fascinating to actually see. To me, kind of like genuinely like seeing someone like you actually implementing animations this way and seeing it so fluid in such a short period of time. And like the animation cards that you mentioned before with the zigzagging and the circles of different dimensions, it made sense to me because obviously I've been in quite a lot of mocap shoots and stuff. So I'm like, I get it. Like I know what you're trying to achieve, and then seeing it in game and just putting the data raw into game and seeing those results. Super cool.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Well, it was like I was lucky enough to be the first person to kind of present it and talk about it, but there was a team of people behind that,
for sure.
Like extremely smart people. I was just thinking of how to, from an animation perspective, I was just like, because I was the same as you, I was like, this is going to destroy animation. It's like, what are we going to do? But I remember thinking, it's like, you just had to switch. You just had to kind of think about it in a different way. It's like when you're on a mocap set, you'd end up doing a lot of your kind of direction there. And it will only work for certain games. Like, I still don't think it works very well for fast-paced games. Yeah. I think that it works well for games that are supposed to have that weight. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think it would work perfectly for a Splinter Cell. I think it worked perfectly for Last of Us, because again, it's a slower pace kind of game. I think if you've got something that's super twitchy, I don't think it'll work.
That's great.
So yeah.
Chromosome actually asked, is it worth it to use motion matching with hand key animation?
Yeah, you can. It's a lot of work, but you can do it. It's like you've effectively got to create dance cards, though. You can actually make it work with a limited amount of animation. It just doesn't look as good. I think that it shines and it works. It works much better. Cameron's still awake and he's showing me Lego now. Hang on. What's this?
Lego.
What this is. So, but it's late, Cameron. I don't know why you're still up.
Guitar.
But
Like a guitar.
Yeah, thanks, bud. So it's like you can do it with keyframe animation. Oh my god.
Oh, he's back. Hey, Cameron.
He's back. You can do it with keyframe animation. I just think that it kind of negates the whole point of it. It's like we were trying to do it. Sorry, wait a second. We were trying to do it with mocap basically to kind of skip to the end for realistic games. You can do it with keyframe, but I kind of don't think it makes sense. Yeah. But I'd love to see someone try. I mean, I did it. I did it with keyframe animation. Yeah. It just takes a lot of. It's almost like you've got to animate everything But you could, in theory, do it. You could animate absolutely everything, because the first implementation of motion matching, we used all the animation from Splinter Cell. We kind of just put it all together in one effect. We faked a dance card, and we kind of did that, and it looked good, but it didn't look anywhere near as good as when we did the mocap. And it was a lot easier to make as well, but you kind of have to have access to mocap and everything there. But like mocap suits, you can get mocap suits, and you can do that now. So, and I think there's plugins in Unreal, I think, that work with motion matching, and there's Kinematica, I think, with Unity, which works really well, which is Michael Butner, which is the person I created it with. So
I see. Yeah, it's absolutely everywhere now. Like, I think every single studio out there is trying it one way or the other. So yeah,
everyone's trying it except for me. That's the thing. It's like I'm not working with it anymore. So I would actually really like to return to it, I think, at one point.
Maybe the next project.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So we did try it for Destruction AllStars. We did try it at the very, very beginning. There is a demo somewhere of Destruction AllStars with a very, very early implementation of motion matching. Nice. But Destruction AllStars is a faster paced game, so it just didn't quite fit. Didn't fit the style we wanted to go for as well. So
makes sense. That's cool. Okay, Kristjan, I think I already bored you for an hour and 40 minutes, and I feel like your son needs you.
He shouldn't. It's like it's 11:15. He should be asleep. So.
Quite late, yes, that's true.
Oh no, this has been really fun. You know, like one thing, I talk a lot. So, and if you get me talking about animation, I'll just be like, let's keep going.
No, this is what we need. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I think as you can see by the comments, I think people have been enjoying the chat and asking lots of interesting questions as well. So thanks a lot for taking the time, and I'm really looking forward to playing Destruction AllStars. And I hope you're actually kind of pretty much done at this point, right? I mean,
I'm pretty much locked out now. You know what I mean? As in, they don't want me tinkering. It's like idle hands. If I start kind of tinkering, I might break something. So I think they're kind of like, no, we don't want him doing that.
I guess the game
is things I'm working on.
I guess the game at this point, right?
Sorry, say that again.
I guess the game has gone gold by this point. I'm guessing
pretty much. I'm not allowed to say. So, but if I'm locked out, then you can be pretty comfortable that it's nearly done. So
I mean, the PS5 is to be released in a month or
less than a month now. It's like 3 weeks, I think. Yeah, I think it's like 3 weeks.
So I guess it would make sense. So I'm definitely getting it, and I'll let you know.
Well, let me know what you think when you do. You know, and be honest. So
I will. No problem, man. After all the hard work that you guys have been doing, it's the last thing you can do. So man.
Thanks. This has been an amazing chat. It's been really fun to talk to you, and I'm glad that we actually got to talk properly, and instead of you just being on I know you're on a screen, but you know, like. Now we're both on screen, so it's kind of all right.
At least it's one, right? Because last time, I was in the room and I was the only one on the screen, and I felt exactly as you mentioned before, the outsider going like, "What about me?"
Well, I just remember we're all there and we're all like talking, and then we go, "What do you think, Harvey?" So I understand that was tough for you, but the cool thing is we all seem like we were on the same page anyway. So.
Yeah, no, it was fun. It was fun. Everyone was fine. Everyone was super respectful. I came out of that experience like feeling much more respect, not only for BAFTA but for all of you as well.
Oh, thank you very much. That was awesome.
That was great. That was so cool.
Cool.
So have a good evening, man, and hope to chat to you soon. Chat to you at some point in the future here again. I hope I can invite you.
Hopefully, I'd love to. I'd love to. Anytime, Harvey. Anytime. It's been really fun.
Sweet.
Take it easy, man.
See you, man.
Bye-bye.